I'd like to call the Tuesday, March 23rd meeting of Ann Arbor's Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to order. Ms. Janess, can you do the roll call for us?
Yes, no problem. Chair Lisa Jackson.
Present in Ann Arbor,
Vice
Michigan.
Chair Francis Tedoro Hargraves. Commissioner Walton. Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Altman.
Oh, sorry, are we supposed to be doing the stating our location? There was that email.
Not until April 1st.
Oh, okay, great.
That doesn't go
No one
into
needs to
effect
know where
till
I am
April
tonight.
1st.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So I will add that to your Zoom link so you'll know what to say.
Great.
Okay, Commissioner Caldwell. Not here. Commissioner Birch.
Present.
Commissioner Mary. Commissioner Billups.
Present.
Commissioner Carter.
Here.
Commissioner Ship rather. Councilmember Song. And
Here.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Here.
Okay, I see names, so I know they're here. Okay, you have a
So
quorum?
before we approve the agenda, is there a motion to add an item?
Yeah, can I make a motion? I would like to
Sure.
briefly just have some time to discuss a meeting that myself and Commissioner Francis Tedoro had with the police union, just to update the commissioners about that.
You're breaking up, Commissioner Billups.
There's a
Right.
motion to add a communication about Commissioners Billup and Tedoro Hargraves meeting with the police union.
Correct.
I'll second.
And we could add that to new business. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. And so
Okay.
now, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Fantastic, thank you. And now we've come to the public forum part of our meeting. So if there are members of the public who've called in who may want to have some discussion with us, now is the time to do so.
Okay, I have one person, hold on. Good afternoon. Please unmute. Good afternoon. You have to unmute in order to speak. Okay. Well, Chair Jackson, we might have to come back.
Okay. How do you unmute? Is it *6?
I pushed the key for them to ask to unmute.
Oh, okay. All right, so if the caller gets unmuted, we can come back. You all have received the February minutes. Is there any discussion or correction or addition to those minutes from the February meeting? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the February meeting minutes?
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the February meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So the first item in old business for us is an update on 2020 and 2021 complaints. Commissioner Tedoro Hargraves and I could talk about that a little bit. Because we have a new process for reviewing complaints, which so we have a new process that was developed in conjunction with the Ann Arbor Police Department and the City Attorney's Office, as we mentioned last month. we've been utilizing that to go back and re-review some of the cases from 2020 and finalize some of the complaints from 2020. And so we're in the process of doing that and working our way through them. That may take us a couple more months to get through them all, but we are working through those. And then Commissioner Tadora Hargraves, did you want to talk about 2021?
Sorry about that. So you should have received on the 10th, the 2021 log. So you'll get that. The whole commission should get that every month regularly. So you'll see where we're at on those. And that'll help you to be able to see what the information managers are working on also and seeing how our progress is going. So we'll make sure that that goes out on the 10th. Denise did a really good job of following up on that. So she'll continue to follow up until we really get into a good groove of it. So we have that right now. PD is still working on both of those. If you remember in the ordinance, it does state that the police department does the initial investigation first. And then once their investigation's over, then they send it to us. So until they get to that point, we don't have anything to actually look at yet for 2021. So as Commissioner Jackson mentioned, we are going back into 2020 and are reviewing those. Last week, we had our first review process meeting with the deputy chiefs and the city attorney to basically what we did is we had the process that we developed in our hands, and we did the review per the process. So we came up with a few little bugs and tweaks that we're doing, and I am putting those tweaks in the process now. Once that document is finalized, we'll forward that out to the full commission also. So you'll have an understanding of what it is that we're doing, that the information managers are working on. So
it was like our pilot, our test run. We are now able to access body cam video remotely. We are able to see reports remotely. We're able to see some things without redaction, but we're limited right now to 3 information managers per case. And so there are 3 different people on different cases between all of the people who were reviewing. And so we had to kind of work out the process of making sure that, person A got the, body cam footage for their case, but person D did not get that. And that person B was reviewing different cases. And so we kind of worked through some of those glitches, found a couple more, and have, I think, pretty much smoothed out the process. I'm sure we'll find a couple more glitches as we go along, but it is getting much, much smoother. And so this is the most efficient that we have been in terms of getting information that actually gives us enough depth of information and having it available remotely. And all of those, of course, were challenges, security challenges and lots of challenges we had, but it's, I think, worth the difficulty because going forward, commissioners will be able to do this remotely from their homes, which makes sense because if people are working 9 to 5, they may need to review cases at midnight, and probably the police department does not want us, in their building at midnight trying to review video. So it's been a little bit challenging, but it's been a good process, and it will certainly serve commissioners well going forward. So we're happy about that. Any questions about that process? Or I know you've heard about it before a little bit, but. Okay, so moving on to new business. We have spoken and a little bit here, and we have spoken at City Council. We have seen that Councilmember Ramlawi sponsored a resolution. In MLive today, there's a discussion of the mayor having a resolution, and we have been engaged in conversations with the Sheriff's Department and with community mental health and other stakeholders about unarmed responses to crises. We understand that There is a current model where community mental health may go out unarmed. And we also understand that there are times when they don't feel it's appropriate to go out unarmed. They may require a co-response from Ann Arbor Police Department or Saline or the Sheriff's Department or anybody else in Washtenaw County, and that they might deem that to be appropriate. And, you know, that could be for their safety or safety of clients, or certainly one of the things we think about is the fact that if community mental health goes out and there's a client who might need to be hospitalized, but is not willing to do so willingly, if there's a determination that they should be hospitalized for their safety, that only a sworn officer has the ability to take them to the hospital without their express consent. And so there are some cases where community mental health has felt like that was appropriate. We, however, have been thinking about the ways in which people come in contact with the police and find themselves in situations that are more dangerous because police are armed. And in many of those instances, it can reduce the risk to everyone if crises are handled by people who are trained to respond to crises unarmed. That does not mean disarming people who are currently armed. It means finding people and finding a model where being unarmed is the standard, is the baseline, and developing that kind of public safety for the community. And so we know that there are several models out there, and we are encouraging the exploration of those. We've all had conversations with many different groups of people, and I was fortunate to have a conversation with Councilmember Song and the mayor. And one of the things we were talking about was thinking about things that we haven't seen yet here. And the necessity for us to stretch our imaginations a little bit more in terms of what's possible for Ann Arbor. I think one of the things about COVID is that everyone Zooms now, and so it's pretty inexpensive to collaborate or consult with people in California or Oregon or other places and find out how they're doing things. It doesn't require a flight anymore. And so we're really hopeful that we can think of some things that we haven't tried in Ann Arbor yet. And that might require, I suspect it will require some expertise from other places, conversations with council, and I'm sure the city administrator about how some of those things might be executed. But we are hopeful that we can certainly engage in those conversations, and that as these resolutions evolve, that they will include some thinking that has not been seen heretofore in Ann Arbor. Commissioner Tedora Hargraves, were you about to say something on that?
Actually, I do. I know when I spoke at the last council meeting in regard to the resolution that was previously brought, one of the things that I specifically mentioned was that we at ICPOC were looking forward to being part of the conversation. And I think that we do have a reason to be at the table, specifically for the few things that you did point out, because there are times when individuals may feel they do need a police officer there. And that's going to bring in the policies and the procedures that the police department currently work with that may or may not need to be changed. And so I do believe that we do have a seat at the table. And much like I said during the last meeting, it's something we need to continue to discuss with the county as far as how these calls get dispatched and who is involved in them and who isn't. So.
Any other, I think one of the things so the mayor's resolution and DC3 that I spoke to at the last council meeting are not identical, and maybe DC3 is the overarching goal, and maybe the mayor's resolution fits within that goal. I don't know exactly how well they dovetail together. However, I think one of the things that we appreciated about DC3 was its acknowledgement that there are communities who have been injured more by the war on drugs and punitive and differential policing all over the place, and disproportionate sentencing and convictions, which we have seen in Ann Arbor, in Washtenaw County, sorry. And so we think that it's important to kind of address that notion that there have been some communities who've been disproportionately injured by that. There was also a note, and there was also a line item, sorry, about expungements, which we found to be important and related to certainly reimagining public safety, but also a little bit outside our bailiwick, but certainly within the idea of sort of restorative justice. We're thinking about programs for disadvantaged kids. And so those are things we certainly hope will, sort of continue to be a part of resolutions reimagining public safety going forward. I believe Councilmember Lowy, you had your hand up first, and then Councilmember Song.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. Many of us haven't really taken a deep dive into the resolution that the mayor and other council members have brought for the April 5th agenda, but I can speak to DC3 that's been referenced in terms of redirecting the marijuana excise tax that's coming back. It has came back to the city, and we wanted to prescribe it in a way. When I say that, is the co-sponsors, the original co-sponsors, or myself, Councilmember Nelson and Hayner, was to put them into programs that don't currently exist, as you're describing. Getting creative, getting imaginative. Also in response to the unearned response concerns that we have, and unfortunately we saw yet another mass shooting just yesterday. But to back to this is to obviously involve ICPOC. ICPOC is in all the conversations that council members have when it relates to these matters, and as such, you see that in the proposed resolution that's coming forth on April 5th, where ICPOC is clearly identified in that. And but here we wanted to talk about a lot of things. And in fact, since that passage, I had some exciting conversations with staff about what can be done with this money in terms of expungement and diversions, and the probation officers aren't as busy anymore as they used to be. Anyhow, really restructuring, some of the resources that we have here to address the needs going forward, because we are obviously going under a dramatic criminal justice reform throughout this country. Anyhow, we're going to be seeing, reorganizations with professionals and resources to better handle and better care for things. So I won't go on too long about this, but I am excited that it did get unanimous support. I think had it by the end 6 co-sponsors, including the mayor. So it was tremendously supported, and it really allows for funding on programs that, like you mentioned earlier, currently don't exist, so we can get creative and people can start looking at Ann Arbor as the beacon for programs more so than we have recently.
Councilmember Song?
Hey. So I appreciate that little bit of background on Councilmember Lowy's resolution. It is really exciting. I know the city had already been working on some programs related to youth, specifically foster care youth, and having kind of like a summer works, or actually no, permanent work program, so that youth aging out of foster care would be able to be matched with different departments that were looking for work. And this was a partnership with the Neutral Zone, and I was on the board of the Neutral Zone and was really happy to follow that progress, but funding kind of went by the wayside. So hopefully this is something that specifically can be budgeted for in the coming years. The clean slate work is really exciting. I know I chatted a little bit with Attorney Slay about this. I've been following this in the state, and my family had helped fund Project Clean Slate in Detroit. So Detroit already has a really good leg up on this. They've got folks in the Detroit Police Department just making sure that expungements happen on the ready internally before you don't have to wait for fairs to happen. And that time difference is such a boon to families who can't afford to have a family member incarcerated or have this on their record for much longer, right? So I encourage folks to take a look at Project Clean Slate in Detroit. It's really, folks can check their status, their pro bono attorneys can volunteer. They look for other attorneys, other volunteers too. As far as the resolution that's coming up at the next council meeting, I don't know if I would really characterize it as the mayor's resolution. I think folks, a lot of us had worked hard on this.
Sorry.
That's okay. I know he's a popular guy. But what I was really excited about was that I was able to pull Dr. Jackson and then also public health folks who were really instrumental in making sure that the National Public Health Group asserted that race is a public health crisis, right? The county had already passed that statement, and the city followed along last July before I was on board. So I'm really hoping, and that insight from Dr. Paul Fleming at the university was really, really instrumental in kind of framing this other resolution. I'd love it if we can actually start speaking frankly to race and policing, and I was really, really happy to reference his research and the data and share that with the folks who have worked on this resolution. So you'll see some of that reflected, some of that language reflected. And you also see language on continuum of care. And that really reflects on, what the county is already doing. I'm a social worker. This is what we talk about, is making sure we connect the dots and that people get the help they actually need. So I think, hopefully between Councilmember Omlawi's resolution and this one that's coming up, folks can kind of connect the dots so that there's a more expansive view of what policing and public safety can look like, and how social services are essential to that. And if we can avoid incarceration, I think we're all on the same page. If we can limit and avoid incarceration, then it helps everyone. So that's my little spiel about what's coming up. You might have already seen an MLive article. I'm excited, and I'm glad to hear that there's excitement in the community too. All right.
Any further discussion on that? Councilmember Romlawi?
Thanks. Just a second time. I apologize for being long, but I'm just equally excited. We have, now the support and the fundage to go after some of these programs we've been talking about for a long time. And I know the clean slate was talked about by my colleague. I'm not as familiar with it as Councilmember Song is, but just speaking with our own city attorney's office, I know they're doing a lot of work internally right now, and more is going to be required if we want to continue with expungement and break those intergenerational issues that are the consequence of the injustice that's served. But there's been a lot of legislation recently that's passed that's going to go into effect soon, that's going to allow people to qualify for that. But right now, I think there's like 30 or 40 a year. But speaking with sources, talking about hundreds, perhaps soon, will be eligible locally here for expungement. And some of them simply don't have the $30 or $40 in court fees to pay for the paperwork. So I'm hoping that resolution that was passed, marijuana excise tax, will help pay for not just the staff, but help pay for some of these small fines and fees that keep people locked in these chains. So, hopefully, again, I'm super excited, and within weeks or months, we will have more detail on what that will look like. But here locally, we're going to be able to do a lot of good.
And I want to make a plug too, as Councilmember Song was making a plug for Neutral Zone. I'm going to throw one out there for Ozone House too, because they do lots of work with young people coming out of the foster care system, and they have job training programs already. So I hope you guys think about them as well in terms of already established programs that work for young people to do job training as older adolescents and young adults. And so that's something that's already within their bailiwick, and they're kind of nationally recognized for some of that work as well. So we have so many good resources in this community, and I'm sure there are more as well that can contribute to thinking about some of these restorative justice issues. And so that's really exciting to think about going forward. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Othman.
I think one of the centers that would probably be involved is the Dispute Resolution Center. Also, they're following up on some of the like foster kids and some other issues that are related to the youth, and trying to help them out. The other thing I have is what we are doing is it looks like we are doing something in isolation of the county. Are there some other resources available in the county that also would augment what the city will be doing? Are we duplicating things? Are we synergizing efforts? Because really we need to look at not only at ourselves, but also the neighbors and neighboring cities and towns, etc. And if there are certain programs that are available, if we add to that, I think we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. And in your suggestion, I don't know if I reported back on this, but I did have an extensive conversation with Kathy Wyatt, who talked about a lot of things that were going on at the county level. And then I was able to have conversations with the executive director and others at Community Mental Health. And so absolutely much of what is being talked about here has to be done in coordination with the county, because it doesn't make sense. Kind of Ann Arbor is not an island. And so we only have, our council only has control over its budget, but there is an understanding that there needs to be coordination with the county, and that other municipalities will likely be considering in what ways they want to participate. For example, it would be very challenging for community mental health to have one kind of response in Ann Arbor and another in Saline and a different one in Pittsfield Township and a fourth one in Ypsilanti, for example. So we know that there is quite a bit of coordination that needs to happen. And it doesn't look like right now anybody is, it seemed perhaps that people were thinking about duplicating what CMH already does, but it turns out not to be the case. And so, but there is, as you're saying, an understanding that everything that happens here, or much of what happens here will have to be coordinated with the county so that it can work seamlessly, and so that there isn't too much stress on, the systems that exist that work across the whole county level.
And one other thing is also recently the sheriff had waived about $500,000 of fines of the individuals who were incarcerated. So that is really something that would benefit.
That was amazing.
All individuals that are affected by that. And I think later on I'll probably add a little bit at the different subcommittees and reporting. I can also report a little bit on the crew and what we are doing in our subcommittee related to some of these issues being addressed.
And because there have been some programs like this around the country, there's now data on what things like that can mean for a family or for individuals when they have fees like that waived, when they have drug offense charges expunged, that for things that are now not illegal. And you can see how that impacts college students who aren't eligible for federal loan programs, or sometimes aren't able to do housing because of those kinds of things. And we see how families are impacted when they get out from under fees for mandatory health screenings in jail, for example, or, you know, when they were being charged for haircuts. And so one of the things that the sheriff did that was so progressive, in addition to waiving the fees, was kind of look at how those fees are charged going forward. And so thinking about, you know, how we're going to charge people for these things that we deem to be mandatory as you might get processed through, can we change the way we're doing that so there's not such a financial burden? And so it was wonderful that they were able to come to an agreement with the county and allocate funds to sort of expunge those fees, but also that they're thinking about how to restructure them in the future. So the other people won't have that same burden as well. So these are things that are really interesting and helpful, and I would say, in my personal opinion, overdue, but we're very excited to see them happening, and we're excited to see more as we think about how we can change public safety and how we can make it worthy of how we see Ann Arbor, right? And that's a big thing. It's not, you know, just the police. It's not just community mental health. There are changes that need to be made in lots of different places. And we're excited to be thinking about them. Particularly as we think about, you know, sort of unarmed crisis responders, and maybe unarmed, you know, work in other ways, like, you know, traffic enforcement for citations that are civil infractions. Does that require an armed response? And so those are things that I hope we are thinking about as we go forward, and just thinking about how we can do public safety better, how we can be maybe a model for the nation, but more importantly than that, how can public safety exist in Ann Arbor in a way that suits this community, in a way that, and, you know, and sort of rises to the expectations that we have for each other here. Commissioners Billups and Todoro Hargraves, do you guys want to talk about your meeting with the union or union representatives, or?
Sure, I'll start, and Commissioner Todoro Hargraves, if you want to jump in and make sure you cover anything I've missed, that would be great. So on March 16th, we had a meeting with representatives of the Officers and Command Union to discuss, basically, it was a meet and greet, and part of the process was to discuss miscommunication and misinformation. Information like the union didn't want to meet with us, ICPOC wasn't interested in meeting with the union, all of those things that have been floating around, which were not the truth. We had a meeting to discuss that and to talk about common desires for ICPOC and the police union to work together and be successful with the whole area of oversight. We talked about the fact that there will be differences and disagreements, that we are an independent group of 11 commissioners, but that our job and role is different than theirs, but that we're working together to build bridges between them and with the community as a whole, to get the community to understand what's happening with police officers, but also for the police officers to understand what's important to the community, that it's a two-way street. We talked about the process of us reviewing reports, because there was some miscommunication around that, and they were understanding now of our committee of 3 and the processes as to how we review things. As a matter of fact, they were very excited, well, very supportive of the fact that we want to view body cam footage. As a matter of fact, they said, a couple of the officers said they want us to make sure that we see all of the body cam video around situations. We agreed to meet again in April, just to have an open line of communication to discuss, as things come up, differences, or to explain positions. Commissioner Todoro Hargraves, am I missing anything?
No, I think you covered it all very well. You know, it wasn't a very long meeting. We both we asked them questions, they asked us questions, basically just to clear the air and get to know each other. I thought one of the questions of interest was they were interested in why we wanted lien access. And when I explained to them the only reason we wanted lien access was so we could get to the body cam footage, then they understood and they were like, yeah, we want you to see the body cam footage. So I think that the more that we're able to see that more effectively without lien being used as a reason for it to take so long, we just realized we were all on the same page, and we really we both had the same goal, which was to review the body camera footage. So I think that helped definitely clear the air, which is exactly what we were trying to do with the meeting. So it was good.
And it's important to point out that the vast majority of complaints that we get are not from people in the criminal justice, in the lien system.
Mm-hmm.
And so LEAN stands for the Law Enforcement Information Network, and which would allow us to see information about people who may have some criminal
Mm-hmm.
information in the system. But because most of the complaints, the vast majority of complaints we get are from citizens who have no criminal background, LEAN becomes unnecessary. In the beginning, it was thought that it would help us review complaints faster because the city attorney's office or the police would have less to redact. It became clear to us that wasn't really necessary because that's not who our complainants are. And it took a while for that to become apparent to us. As we began to get more and more complaints, it became clear that mostly they're citizens who don't have any information in lien. And so, that isn't a part of the redactions that have to take place. So.
Right. When you look at the body camera footage, some that we're seeing, there's no redaction needed. So the idea up front that it was going to take a long time to get us these videos, it just actually didn't come to fruition.
And there was a little bit of adjustment that had to be made on the part of, like city attorney's office was different people were doing redactions for a while. And so now we have a very consistent input from the city attorney's office. And so that's much more clear and much more streamlined, and Attorney Slay works much more closely with the police department. And so that works really well. And so there's just a really smooth understanding of what they need to redact. Obviously, incidental information coming across a radio that's unrelated to what we're looking at, we shouldn't be privy to that. So that might be sort of redacted, something like that, or but it's not the kind of redaction I think we thought that was going to have to be necessary in the beginning. So nothing that that like we thought would happen, but that just took us getting adjusted to who our complainants are and understanding what the process would be. And so these are growing pains, and turned out that was one that really worked well, in that it wasn't something that we needed to have. I think we thought it was really important in the beginning, but as we got to do the work more, we realized it wasn't as important as we thought it was. So that's great.
Great for them to hear that clarification from us. And to go through the, historically how this came about and where we were at with it. So it was good to clear the air that way.
Well, I think it was, you guys did a great job, and it was great to clear up some of the miscommunication, but also just to open the communication channels so that there can be, an easier exchange of information back and forth. That could be certainly useful. The more informed we are, the better we do our work. Any reports from any committees?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just we have this regular meetings with Human Rights Commission about the crew report. And we came up with a few points that we need to focus on, because there are other groups in the county that are working on related issues of the crew report. And we have decided on things like mental health as one of the issues. Second is on the probation and payroll, and that requires imposing some kind of fine sometimes or so on individuals who are not in a position even to pay for these small infractions, and what that does to the cascade of one thing leads to the second, and you start with something related to maybe a few bucks at the stop sign or so, and you did not pay, and then now you are being brought to the court and impose more on you, or sometimes you might be apprehended or placed in jail for some time, and you have to pay for that. So the issue is, I think the DA is working on something like that across the county, and we say to wait and see what they are doing, and also helping out those individuals by having them informed of what they need to do in case they have this issue. They don't need to run away. The other thing is also there was an issue related to individuals who sometimes drive without a license. And those individuals, they are not doing that because they want to break the law, but because they don't have the means to acquire the license. And there was some kind of talk about having other organizations that might help in sponsoring some of those individuals who are in this type of bracket, financial, socioeconomic bracket, that probably would benefit from such funds or so. And that would alleviate the problem of having this type of violation. And the other point is the data. This is something that's lacking. If we are going to be pursuing anything in the future, if we don't have data, we can't really do anything. So we want to have like individuals who are being ticketed or being placed and brought to court and all that, how those individuals can be helped, what type of data available to them, how many are coming from Ann Arbor versus other towns and cities of the county. So we need to have this type of data. As individuals, we cannot do that. They need to have someone who is really data expert to do that. And we can probably interrogate the data any way we want based on our needs or what type of study we are going to be doing. So this is an ongoing type of conversation that we have. It's very interesting to see spectrum, not from just us over here in the town, in Ann Arbor, but also across the county.
Thank you. Commissioner Birch. Wait, you're muted.
I lowered my hand instead of unmuting myself. I don't have to go first if Commissioner Francis Tedora was up next, or if Councilmember Romali was.
You know what? You guys are moving around the screen, and I thought you were first, but I apologize.
Okay. And go. Okay. Just a few things that I wanted to update everyone on. So last month, I got to meet with the Tenant Leadership Board at Avalon, which is comprised of different residents in the community. They sit on this community engagement board called VOCAL, Voices of Community Advocates and Leaders, and they discuss advocacy and engagement opportunities for their residents. And it was a really interesting conversation. They definitely just had a lot of questions about what ICPOC does, how we can continue to provide updates to them about things that we're doing, ways that they can get involved. There was even like discussion on maybe setting up some sort of like liaison role between ICPOC and their residents, because it definitely was plainly stated that they feel as though they get over-policed, in the sense that for calls that seem not as urgent, they felt like lots of officers will show up, and then that will heighten a situation, and then it frightens the kids in the community, and then residents are just kind of, unsure about what's going on. So I really appreciated that I, had time to meet with them, hold space for their questions, concerns, and just bring back to you all that they are really invested in the work that we're doing. They want to know how that trust and community can be built between the police and their residents. So really, really enjoyed that conversation. Did you have questions about that, Lisa? Or? Okay. The only other couple of things were that I saw that the notice had gone out on March 16th that the AAPD is accepting applications for police chaplains, and that this is a new program they've started. I would love to connect with Officer Doug Martell about that, just kind of how it was spurred, what they're thinking, ways we can partner with them to either help with recruitment or just learn more about how we can support that initiative, because it definitely sounds important, that they're wanting to provide this level of community engagement where it sounds like the chaplain is providing support to officers and civilians, just counseling around mental health, suicide awareness, prevention. It sounds like a really, really great program. So any way we can support those efforts, I'm definitely looking forward to a conversation about that. And then lastly, so I am now sitting on the task force that's reviewing public safety on U of M's campus, because I'm a staff member there. And something that the outreach committee that I lead for that task force is reviewing is the public safety app that their Department of Public Safety has. And so I was just interested in maybe that could be a conversation we have with the AAPD about a public safety app, a way to sort of see on a map where crimes are happening. It's an easy, accessible way for community members to receive alerts just about emergency notifications. And it's also a way for people to provide anonymous tips. So it's pretty user-friendly, accessible. I know it definitely resonates with the students. And as we're just trying to think about ways to continue to center the community and their needs, wondering if an app can just be another way to kind of reach folks we might not be accessing in that sense. So those are my updates.
I wanted to add to your chaplain question. I noticed something about the recruitment flyer, and I was able to get feedback, and Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves was having a conversation with Deputy Chief Metzer, and they were really open to our suggestions. There was a way that they had worded the counseling issue that was that they were able to revise and tweak just a tiny bit, and so I know that the police department is very open to teaching us about the program and getting input about it from us, and so that is certainly wonderful. Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves, were you next up? This is my assistant, my personal assistant. Sorry.
There were two things, and I was reminded when Commissioner Billups was talking about our meeting with the officers. We've been invited to some training that they've done. We've had 7 officers who have become trained in law enforcement active de-escalation training. So those 7 are now actively training the rest of the department. It's a 5-hour training session, and they have invited us to attend. So I was thinking that we would start with the information managers, since we would be reviewing complaints and police officer actions, and then start opening it up to others. And I can send you the schedule and everything once I work that out with Lieutenant Fox and others to get folks on there. Another training, and I don't know what the other information managers are feeling, but I was feeling some pain this afternoon trying to juggle logging into the city system and, you know, figuring out what else I need to do. And I know it is important that we use the city system because of the sensitivity of what we're reviewing. So I was speaking with Assistant City Attorney Slay, and we were thinking that we will set up a training maybe with somebody from IT who can help the 5 of us get a better understanding of what we need to do to get all our logins up and running. I know we need more than one because we need some other logins besides the city one. So I'm going to be getting that training set up also. So I'll be in touch with all of you about that.
And I'll be buying some pretty large flash drives for everybody to store their information on, because people have different systems, and we've seen some differences in operating systems and whether you log on from a Mac or a PC or a tablet. And so we're trying to get all that coordinated. And one thing that might help make this more secure is if we're keeping documents that we're keeping, not the body cam footage or anything like that, but our notes on a flash drive, and you might be able to securely move that around while just kind of having things in one place. So I'm gonna get a bunch of those for anybody who needs those. Depending on your computer situation, we do not want the age of one's laptop to prevent anybody from participating in this process, or the age of operating systems, et cetera. So if anybody is having difficulty with that, you know, certainly reach out to me and let me know that. I have been able to get in. I've finally been able to open up my city email. I've been able to get into evidence.com. And my process for doing that was different than Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves. And so we know it might be different for everybody else. So if you are an information manager, if you would, in the next couple of days, make sure you can log into all those systems and see body cam footage, that it actually plays for you. I think everyone, so all 5 of us, should have things in a file available to us. And then on in April, we'll sit down with the deputy chiefs and review those cases together. But it's good to know like what works and what doesn't work long before that, so we can get it fixed if we need to. And then just make sure we keep working out the kinks. So Council Member Ramlawi, and then Commissioner Walton.
Thanks. I'm going to take us a step back here. I just wanted to thank Francis and Bonnie for meeting with the union and having a conversation, breaking the ice. I think, quite frankly, it's overdue, and it's good to see that happen. Much of what I contend with outside of meetings is just the lack of information, misunderstanding, lack of trust. Really makes our jobs a lot much more difficult when those are the surrounding you know, feelings and perspectives that people have. So I appreciate that quick conversation had led to some common understanding and can lead to further dialogue. I do, as I've been sitting here for a long time, feel that there's much more in common than there is what is acknowledged. And so just want to thank the commission for doing that, and I hope it continues. And if there's anything that someone in my position can do to help that, please reach out. And I will be more than happy to provide whatever I can to facilitate those conversations and dialogue. I think it's very important. We keep touching on it. It was touched on again today about trust, and we need to build that trust. And so hopefully that can continue. And I know this isn't a perfect world, and I don't expect it to be that way after just a few conversations, but I believe we're better off with having them. And then I guess, you know, for this commission and the difficulties it's having with the work that's being asked, if there's a need for personal devices, perhaps the equipment or supplies this commission needs to do the work and investigate, please ask. We do have a budget. And I don't think, you know, when this commission was formed or anyone was really thinking that 2 or 3 years ago, that we'd be doing as much as we're doing now electronically. So I think it's a very, you know, reasonable request if we have to make a request for any of the commissioners to have the devices given to the commissioners that need it, what they need. So we're all working from the same platform, and you're not trying to be IT. That's not what you signed up for. It's not the IT commission. So, so I appreciate the work that you're all doing.
And I'll keep polling people to make sure that people do have the equipment that they need. But Councilmember Rumlawi is correct. If the commission needs to purchase some laptops that need to be, you know, loaned out to people as they do their work, then that's definitely something that's within our purview to do that. Obviously, they would belong to the city. And I think our preference is that maybe we just borrow them from the city because they will update their stuff regularly. If we got something, it would get old soon. So that might be a better solution. You know, I'll be reaching out to everybody, touching base with you about your IT needs, particularly as you review cases, but even as you do other work. Commissioner Walton, and then Commissioner Othman.
Thanks. I just wanted to give a quick update actually on the budget, which is sort of a bit of a non-update because I don't have final word yet, but the City Administrator's Office, they did accept our budget as we have discussed before. So we are putting forward a budget with no cuts from previous years, and in fact, actually with a modest amount extra for some additional training.
And IT.
Yeah, and yes.
Training. It was training.
It was training. We didn't get additional money for IT, but we are using more IT now, and it is kind of linked with the city. So there is a change in those fees based on what we're using and what we're doing. So, but yeah, with a little bit of extra money for training, and along those lines, after the discussion last meeting, hopefully next meeting, I'm going to be bringing a proposed draft for sort of a training outline so that we can consistently, new commissioners come in, we'll have, you know, some expectations of what they'll be doing in the first 30 and 90 days to get acquainted with everything, and then some ongoing things for us. There's lots of flexibility, and it's not necessarily you must do these 4 things, but we're tying it very closely back to NACOL's things. So the 13 principles and the different tracks they have where you can specialize your knowledge over time. So just giving a heads up. And if anyone's got thoughts on those, specifically on things that should be in initial training and things like that, please let me know, and I can build them into the draft. It will just be a draft.
I've got a chance to review her Commissioner Walton's draft, and it is really wonderful. And it talks about sort of onboarding training, but it also talks about continuing education. And one of the things that I've kind of talked about a lot is that oversight is a profession, and just as police are professionals and other people are professionals, oversight requires a certain amount of training, and it requires ongoing training and being well versed in, you know, sort of things from case law all the way to current perspectives in oversight. And those things are unique, you know, obviously from policing, although related to the oversight of policing. And so Commissioner Walton's plan will be very helpful for all of us who are on the commission already in terms of staying current and making sure that we are informed, but also reassuring the public that we are professionals at what we do and that we do have a certain amount of training in terms of what we do. I think part of the training plan includes that a certain percentage of us become certified practitioners of oversight, and that is something that can be done, you know, over time. But that it is important to have people on the commission who have retained that level of training, in addition to the ongoing training that people have, and so. Part of that is just making sure that we do our jobs well, but part of it is also the public having confidence that we're doing what we're doing, not from the position of sitting and sort of the ideas that we judge police, where what we're really doing is thinking about oversight principles. And certainly those include transparency and accountability at the fore, but there are many ways of getting at that. As Commissioner Walton stated, there are many different tracks Community engagement is a track. Thinking about collaboration with other agencies as a track. And so all of these things are very important in addition to oversight principles. And so her plan will make sure that everybody is well-rounded in that, and that there is sort of a continuation of education for all commissioners throughout their tenure on this commission. So it's very, very important. Councilmember Romlawi.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity again. A couple things have been brought up here. The chaplain program that was discussed earlier has been brought to my attention that we used to have that for many, many, many years. So hopefully we can go back and look at that. We're not going to be reinventing the wheel there. There'll be a lot of history to see how that was done, and just answer commissioners' questions and inquiry on that. So bringing back something that did exist prior to the last couple of years. And then I know there's unfortunately it's that time of year where we have people coming off of boards and commissions, and you know, come, I think, May, there's a few commissioners here who their terms are up. I believe the process would be to reapply through the normal process. And then, of course, myself and Councilmember Song and council members from the Human Rights Commission will review the applications and put forth names. But that's going to come up quickly. It is kind of jarred my memory when Commissioner Walton was talking about the budget, and thank you so much for doing that. You've done a terrific job in the years you've been on commission and putting that together, and I'm glad to hear that it was approved. I think the political pressure that the commission and others in our community have put, makes a difference. And we got to put our dollars where our priorities are, and that's good to see. That was the case here, and anyhow, the training, we got a lot invested in this commission with folks and the experience. I know it's taken a long time, but when you start from scratch, that's what happens sometimes. We didn't really have a template to go off of here locally, so it did take a while to get things going, but hopefully we can retain as many people as we can. But it just put that out there, the folks that are coming off, to be able to give some thought on that, and look forward to seeing everybody still. So thank you.
We are on top of it. Commissioner Hoffman?
Yeah, I did mention at the beginning of the meeting about the face identification, the software that's being used and proposed, and per my conversation with my son, I just asked him about what does he think of the system. He said that over the past 2 years or so, there was great improvement in the system itself. However, the system is not good at if you have glasses, if you have a mask, or if you are trying to identify something from a video. If you are trying to take a still from a video, it does not work. The other thing he said that it should be equal to the fingerprinting, meaning that if you have fingerprint, it comes back to only one individual. If you're going to have an image or a picture and comes back with 20 individuals or 5 individuals or 3 individuals, he said that is an issue with the sensitivity, issue with the settings. So unless there are improvements on that front, I think it's a little bit, he said that if it's not going to be as the fingerprinting, I think that is a little bit not as reliable, at least with what they currently have. So there are some drawbacks of the system, and who knows? Maybe in the future the system will become a little bit more reliable in terms of being used and used properly and in a helpful way. So I will probably keep also looking into this as time progresses and see what type of recommendations we would have based on science and based on not just whether or not this software will go and use it, and there's no data that would support. So we really need to be careful about that, because no one is questioning fingerprinting when it comes back, especially if you have a good one. There are partial ones, sometimes this is what you work from. But I think if it's not going to be returning just one individual as fingerprinting, I think I would err on side of caution.
It's such a good point that you've made. We know that right now the technology is not as reliable as it should be, but it's also not as valid as it should be, in that it has difficulty distinguishing between women. We know it has difficulty distinguishing people under a certain age, and so there are a number of problems with that. But these are things we'll get to explore as we work on the facial recognition task force. Councilmember Song.
I just wanted to update folks that there's a lot of community organizing around this already, and there's a site, banthescana2.com, that's already up, and town hall that they're organizing on April 29th. It's a collaboration between a number of organizations in town, and you'll see that there are alerts that you can sign up for, and how to email council, a lot of background information on the technology, how it's been misused. I'm impressed. It's a fancy looking site. And it looks like there's momentum behind this work. So it should be pretty easygoing. And I just want to clarify one thing. Commissioner had said that this is technology that's being used. It's not being used in Ann Arbor, and there's no ambition to use it. The intention behind this was really the motivation behind this is coming from the community, and just trying to make sure that it won't be used. So anyways, it's banthescana2.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If I am not mistaken, we are at the point where we could take public comments. Ms. Janess, do we have anyone waiting at this point? Were we able to retrieve the caller from earlier?
Let's see what we have. No, I don't see anyone.
Okay. This is highly unusual, but we may have done all of the work that we should have done in 1 hour and 10 minutes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Somebody write this down. Record. I feel like we did a lot of work. I know we do most of our work